Welcome to this session. Thank you very much. It is very difficult to decide which session to go in today's conference. 5, 6 tracks, all of them great. I personally had a tough time to select like which one I want to go. But thank you very much to be in this room and listening to us. Me and Mike, we're going to talk about Dart backends and one of the challenges over there, like deployment, scaling, and those kind of things. That is not really like Flutter developers, concern, but still it's a big concern. Let's see how we can fix this. So the question, I think I asked all of the question actually. Let's quickly go through the introduction. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mike, obviously. I'm CTO at Invitays. Work on a lot of projects in the open source community, and also, we're very heavily interested in Dart as a backend language, and so a lot of this talk will cover that. You'll find I'm also actually more of a backend dev, so this talk is kind of sorry, front-enders, or Flutter devs, I guess. But this is me. On to you, Majid.
And my name is Majid. I am head of DevRel at Invitays, also a Flutter community leader. One of the person who is very interested to solve, let's say, problems in Dart and Flutter ecosystem. I've been trying to figure out what can we do to make this ecosystem better. So let's move on and quickly talk about Invitays too, because we do a lot of stuff. Because every time we go somewhere, people know us as a swag company. So because we give Zappy away, we're not a swag company. I guarantee we are a professional team working on different great things. What do we work on, Mike?
Where do I start? We work on basically a lot of tooling in the Flutter community. Like you've probably heard of some of the stuff. Flutterfire, for example. We maintain and build that. Flutterfire team sat over there. Melos for monorepo management, which Gabriel at the back there helps us with. But these are all kind of products that the Flutter community uses. Some of your favorite Flutter plugins, for example, their documentation websites is all powered by DocsPage, one of our products.
If you take a look at these products, you may recognize them, and most of them are free. We're just doing that because we believe the ecosystem requires better contribution to be better. From us, from all of you, of course, which hopefully at the end of this talk, I will encourage you to come and also contribute to what we're going to talk about. Well, let's talk about Dart. Then Mark, what is it?
Dart on the server. Why would we want to use Dart, I guess, is the obvious question. I guess if you're a Flutter developer, it's probably why not. You're familiar with the language, it's null safe, it's type safe. Compilation, so you can have your runtime errors reduced because of the type safe nature of the language, the null safe nature of the language. And obviously, this also increases, or reduces actually the runtime errors, especially in a server production app. You kind of don't want it to crash in production, mess up your database state somehow. You want to avoid that. The other benefit is compiler efficiency. So the Dart compiler, because it's a null-safe, type-safe language, it knows how to well optimize the compiled output. And the way that also benefits, the compiler can also compile a small binary, which is great for portability. The way you do that is obviously the Dart compile exe command, which you might be familiar with. And as an example, you compile, say, a Node.js app. An average Node.js app is probably around 150 meg, whereas Dart is only 10 megabytes compiled, and you can just ship that as is on its own. There's a growing ecosystem, which...
There's actually also a growing ecosystem in Dart right now. We have, if you've been in Flutter community in the last 5 years, let's say, you've seen that how fast the community is growing and how fast there are different frameworks and Like, packages, libraries are coming out. And of course, now we have much better, let's say, product or services as well as libraries to build backend services. For example, Serverpod is one of them, Dartfrog is one of them, and a bunch of others. So, and also one thing, well, as Flutter developers, let's say, so I bet majority of us, like maybe all of us, been working on Flutter, and then somehow we recognize Dart and say, oh, this is great. Why not just sharing the code with our backend team? Maybe we can write in the same code base. Why not doing that? Why not writing our backend in Dart? What's wrong with Dart? I think the problem was until now, or maybe from now on, it gets better. The problem is the ecosystem was not great that you can convince someone else, a backend developer, to come and write some Dart code. But nowadays, standing here after 5 years of being in this community, this is changing. A lot of good libraries, products, services are coming out, which is promising. And of course, this is going to change the way that we're going to write our backends. Let's move on. And then one of the challenges is like writing Dart on server. Well, that's great. Now we're going to write everything in Dart. Fantastic. But one of the problems could be the deployment, right?
Yes.
How can we solve that?
Well, there's a number of ways. I guess we can talk about edge functions, edge networks, and running Dart on those. The traditional approach is just AWS's GCP, containerizing your app and deploying that. Or is there something else maybe? We will discuss that.
So before we continue, I need 2 volunteers to hold this Zappy for me. Potentially from the back. No volunteers. This is giving out for free. Okay, I'm coming to you. Can you hold this for me? And when I said now, when you heard now, give it to this person. Or maybe give it to Enzo. I'm just kidding. Doesn't matter. One of them. Quickly. Well, let's take a look at Dart Edge. One of the things we're going to do in Invertase is to bring in if I say edge, doesn't mean this edge. I mean edge technologies, like very pioneer technologies, right now in different communities to Dart as well. And one of them is, in fact, edge functions. What are edge functions? Does anyone know what is edge function, potentially? Can someone explain to me in English? Please.
So I'd say Cloudflare Workers would be an example of an edge function platform. And it's one where you can run your own code in the CDN, which has got hundreds of points of presence around the world, giving low latency access.
Fantastic. So now let's explain it in action. What is an edge function? Shall I start?
Go for it.
So imagine all of you are a city in the world, and you are a node. You're not a node. You are a person, but imagine, all right? So you're going to have some kind of function written in Dart you deploy somewhere, right? And then you're going to call this in the cloud. Like you get a request coming to your function. I am your request. I'm going to bring this request to you. Well, the way that I can do it right now, traditional way, is like I come all the way to this person and give it to you. Well, that takes time. How long was it? 100 milliseconds. Well, maybe 300 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, depends on where is your function, where is the request, and all of these things, right? But now, how long does it take?
1 millisecond.
1 millisecond. Wow, you are super fast. Maybe 10 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds. The reason is that I'm calling this function instead of here, I am the same function, but I'm actually distributed over there, and I can give that to that person who is requesting for Zap. So this is a technology. It's been around for a while. It's not new, but we're not really utilizing that in Dart community. We try to fix it in Dart community right now. And let's see how it's benefit us.
Yes, so as you've just demonstrated, the low latency in the kind of real person demo, we're not nodes with people, but that's a key benefit, reduced latency. The other thing that these edge functions and edge networks have in common is that there's no kind of, or next to no cold boot times. So your application starts practically instantly versus, the traditional serverless functions, like if you ever used, I don't know, Cloud Run, for example, on GCP, there's always a cold boot penalty when your app starts. It could be 500 milliseconds, it could be 3 seconds, you don't know. And yeah, there's plenty of platforms that were mentioned. So before there was mentioned Cloudflare Workers, but the ecosystem of these edge functions is growing. These platforms obviously now exist. You might have heard of them. Is quite popular now and is growing in popularity.
Yeah, as you can see, there are different providers that are giving these services out, but there is a tiny problem over there. All of them supports our favorite language, JavaScript. Right? Why no one is laughing? No, I'm just kidding. Well, we need Dart. How can we fix this?
Well, so you could compile to JavaScript using the Dart to JS compilation. Not a great experience as a developer. It's slow, there's no hot reload like you're used to in Flutter. And yeah, the bundle sizes aren't great either. You're talking megabytes of bundle sizes in JavaScript. Very readable when you debug them. And yeah, obviously all these platforms have these great APIs and web APIs, like KV, storage, caching, but that's all in JavaScript. So you have to write your own interrupt layer to call these methods from your Dart code, because you can't just use Dart HTML, you can't use Dart IO. These don't exist in this environment. So
what we've done actually to make this barrier a bit simpler is we created let's say an abstraction, a library called Dart Edge to just bring this technology closer to you. You don't need to know anything about maybe JavaScript here. You just write your Dart code and just deploy it to any of these providers. So you benefit from that if you require to have some type of function, some kind of APIs as close as possible to your user, but you want to write it in functions and also in Dart. So what kind of support we have here?
So yeah, as you can see on the screen, we have support for kind of key platforms for Cell, Supabase, Cloudflare, and we're also working on support for Lambda Edge on AWS and other platforms. But yeah, you can just take the CLI, which is open source pub package on pubdev, and install it, generate a new project, call the deploy command, and you're done, I guess.
This is an experimental project. We're trying to bring these edge functions closer to Dart developers. And still, as I said, experimental, and we try to make it better and better every day. We try to also get other possibilities in the future to this project, for example, WASM. So that could be an interesting thing that we can probably do in the future. You can take a look at this link later. You get the slides after our talk, no problem. Don't worry about this. But still, I think there is some kind of problem here. First of all, it's kind of like cheating. You're writing Dart, but at the end, you're just kind of compiling that to JavaScript and deploy. There's still something is like here shaky, which we didn't like. It's a great project, may solve some problems. It brings your Dart code as close as possible to your customer. It's all good, but there's also a but. Let's talk about the deployment a bit. Let's say now you're writing your own backend code in Dart. There is a traditional way of deploying to cloud. Let's talk about architecture.
Of course.
A bit.
Yeah, so I guess in a traditional cloud, you're probably used to, kind of writing a shelf app like this, very basic, and then you take it and Dockerize it or containerize
Who
it.
knows what's Docker? That's good.
And yeah, you can see, this is kind of the traditional approach. You can see we obviously run the dap to compile to exe, ship a binary. That runs when your Docker container starts. So how can we do that? Obviously, we're at a Flutter conference, so we should probably focus on Google Cloud. So yeah, Google Cloud have a tool called Cloud Build where you can kind of create your own build system to build these container images and then push it to its own product again called Artifact Registry. But the question is, now what? How do we run our image?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we're going to get it to the edge, right? How can we make this request as close as possible to customer? How can we run this image?
Well, so we've got it in the Artifact Registry. There's a couple of approaches. You could create your own Kubernetes cluster, manage multiple servers, throw away your credit card, those kind of things. Probably won't focus on that one. So let's focus on Cloud Run, which is kind of similar to serverless architecture. You basically run a function, I guess. So let's focus on that.
Let's do that.
So we've
Anyone knows about Google GCP, let's say? Okay, sounds very good.
So I guess, yeah, you see here we have Cloud Run now deployed in theory. This is kind of a high-level overview. But, are we truly ready for, our multi-billion app? Very popular around the world, but we're running it in US Central.
This is a point that you're thinking about scaling, or we're just going to do scale as well as make it more available everywhere in the world, right?
Exactly, yeah. So someone in Europe and your servers are in the US, they're going to have a fun time
Of course,
loading
this
it.
is a problem that already been resolved by cloud-like providers. So how can we do that?
So something like this, right? We can take our Cloud Run instance and copy and paste it about 40 times, one in each region.
Fantastic. We deployed to 30 different regions. Now, well, how can we make sure we get a request to any of these regions closer to the customer?
Yes, well, in your app, you obviously don't want to program in 40 regions and then try and determine the user's location and then forward it to them. So you probably want to add a load balancer. So GCP, again, provides that. And so we have added a load balancer. I guess we're ready now.
We're kind of ready. Okay, fantastic. A lot of overhead here. You don't know cloud. You need an architect right now. You need to maintain all of this. You need to deploy. What if one region goes down? How do you want to make a backup? How do you want to make sure all of them always running? What about the state in the app? Like your app kind of needs to be stateless because you're deploying to different regions, right? So you need to think about all of this. Well, some of them it's your job. Some of them may not be your job. You can make it simpler. How can we make it simpler?
Well, we could attempt to write our infrastructure as code. How many people have heard of Terraform?
How many of you are terrified when you hear Terraform? It's scary.
It sounds scary, but it's basically just, again, writing your infrastructure as code. And obviously, in the example we've given, we can create some variables to define our regions. Imagine we had all 30 regions there. And then we basically code in some infrastructure around the Cloud Run deployment. And for each of the regions that we've mentioned, it will create a deployment in that region when we call apply.
You see what is happening? So we're trying to, from a very small function, we slowly are trying to make our stack more complex because this is happening in real application deployment. So you need to get these things. If you want to have a better performance for your app, like redundancy on all of these kind of stuff for your applications, for your backend applications especially. So, well, a lot of work needs to be done. Maybe some of these works cannot be done by one person. And typically, is that the case? You need to hire more people, maybe a DevOps. Some people say DevOps is dead. Like, okay, whatever you say, sysadmins, whatever. You need to have people to take care of these architecture, right?
Exactly, yes. And you also probably want to automate the release process. You don't want someone running and cloning and deploying locally from the machine because it works on their machine and doesn't work on yours. So you probably want to automate that. You probably, in a real production app, you're probably not going to test in prod. So you're going to have multiple environments, dev, staging. So now all of a sudden we've got 90 Cloud Run instances because we've got 3 environments. It kind of gets messy.
Another problem would be the cost. If you are not really in cloud architecture, you may deploy this, fantastic, and Google will be very happy because you do it whatever they said in the document. You may not read the other document about cost and optimization, and you get a nice bill. This is fantastic. So you need to take care of all of these things, right? What if we make it easier?
Yeah, and to add to, not just cost as well, you're committing your code, you want to regularly test it out, again, not in production, so you commit to GitHub, for example, and you want to test that instance of that deployment. You can't do that in Cloud Run. You have to push your entire environment, pull your repo, push to that one single environment. Whereas what about if you could have every single commit be a preview?
Yeah. Of course, we do test in production. We don't care about preview, but if you do care, that could be an interesting solution. Let's go. So I think we just want to show you right now all of the things we talk about architecture. You're writing your application right now in Dart. There are different solutions. So what if we just show you how you can deploy and take care of everything that we discussed right now in the last 10 minutes and see how you can manage it as a Flutter developer or a Dart developer. Let's go for a demo.
Sure.
It was working last night. I don't guarantee if it works right now.
I've not slept
live
some days,
demos,
so.
right? Let's have fun. There are some video backup.
Okay, so yeah, we'll quickly just create a traditional
We
Dart
made
shelf.
a service called Globe.
Yes.
And technically what it does is just abstract away all of the things that we mentioned into one simple service. And you can have a CLI named Globe where you can create your project as well as deploy your project. We don't mind what is your project. In Dart, you can use Dartfrog, Serverpod, whatever. We just deploy it for you with one command line. Let's take a look.
Yeah, so we
Let's
attempted
actually build a shelf app.
Yeah, we
Should
attempted to create one. I've obviously, for this demo, already created one. But yeah, let's open that in VS Code. So you'll see here, this is kind of the traditional
Is it familiar to many of you?
template.
What's that? Some people said yes, yes, yes.
Most people said no.
But
then.
I said, what's that? They don't know.
Okay, so this is a shelf app. It
It's a
creates
shelf app.
an HTTP web server.
Technically, we are building just a shelf app, getting the requests, responding with a simple hello world.
Yeah, so we can upgrade that message. We'll print some logs. We'll also say hello from Globe at FlutterCon. And so now let's deploy that.
You've seen, interestingly, we had a header as well, which says X Globe city. We even can recognize in your request which city you are sending this request. So let's take a look.
So yeah, we've run the Globe deploy command, and we'll create a new project, call it FlutterCon. Hopefully it works. Okay, so yeah, our deployment is now in progress.
That's it. So we now queued a deployment. That's it. So you build your Flutter application, backend. Thank you. Let's take a look at dashboard. Let's see what is now happening afterwards. That was a single command, but there are lots behind it.
Okay, so here's our FlutterCon one we just created. As you can see here, it's deploying currently. So we can go into that.
It's working.
It's working. Don't jinx it. So yeah, it's deploying currently. We can obviously keep an eye on our deployment.
You get a dedicated HTTPS subdomain in Globe, and soon you will also get like a domain assigned, so you can have your own domain. So let's see.
Yeah, so we have a build in progress. You'll recognize some of the build logs. You don't really need to care about them unless you've got an issue in your Dart code. But you can see here's the standard Docker stuff that you don't have to care about now. No Docker file.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. You just write your Dart code and just give us the entry point to the server that you're writing, your backend, and just say deploy.
Ignore this the template from Dart Create obviously has a Docker file in it, but this is just not used.
We don't need anything. Just deploy.
And obviously, it doesn't matter which framework you're using. So this is just a shelf app, but I could, in theory, just deploy a Dartfrog app and set my framework preset to Dartfrog, but it will automatically detect it as well. So if you want to go from shelf to Dartfrog later, it'll automatically detect that you're Dartfrog now. It'll run the Dartfrog build commands for you and deploy your app again.
The main point, let's say that. The main point here is to simplify the way that you're writing your backend. We don't mind. You write it in Dartfrog, server prod, or whatever. We're just gonna recognize it, and then whatever is needed to build that project, we're just automatically doing that for you. Again, you don't care about building and deployment. You just write in your favorite framework. As of now, we're just supporting Dartfrog. We're hoping to get other frameworks, hoping to work with other creators as well to get more framework into this, of course, platform. Well, let's see. It's deployed.
Yes, it's deployed. So
it's actually working.
Less than 2 minutes, it's deployed.
What happens when we say deploy?
Okay, so our infrastructure is kind of a hybrid. So we have Edge Network, which kind of handles all the routing and other cool features like A/B testing, rollbacks. This is obviously powered by our Edge Network, which is kind of in 300 and something regions around the world.
We're leveraging some cloud providers' infrastructure to deploy your application right now to 300 nodes around the world. So your request to that subdomain goes to the closest one to your customer. So again, you don't think about these kind of stuff, you just deploy. We take care of that. And that was the reason you had that header in the code. Can we quickly show the code one more time, the respond?
Okay, so we have the header.
That's the header. We're providing a bunch of headers to give you more data about the requests. So, and one of them is, of course, the city of the request. And that's actually useful when we are balancing the load to the nodes.
Exactly. You can return data specific to your user's locale or their time zone, where they're based. You can do all of that from these headers that we inject into your request. And you'll see here when we go and call this, and we'll check the logs. Who can have a guess at what city it's going to say? Hopefully Berlin.
If logs work.
If logs work. There you go.
There's always something in demo, live demo, that it doesn't work. There is a lot of other headers that you can get, like latitude, longitude, countries, or like these kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, you can take a look at that in the documentation.
All of our documentation is currently open, public. Obviously, we're still in private preview, but you can have a look around our documentation.
There was one excuse in Dart and Flutter community, when they talk to other backend developers, and that was, what about deployment? So it's going to be difficult for Dart because some platforms doesn't support that. Some cloud providers may not provide Dart, blah, 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 blah. But now, I guess, we have good frameworks. We have the base, everything you need to write your backend, and deployment was an issue. I don't think there is an issue anymore. You can do that right now with just one command. But let's move on. So, and first of all, although this is our dashboard, a still work in progress. We're just building, as I said, to make sure we're filling some gaps in the Dart ecosystem.
Yeah, so a key kind of gap we mentioned before is, what if every single commit was a preview? And yes, the Globe supports that. You can connect to your GitHub repository, and every time a commit is triggered, a build is deployed, and you have a preview URL within 2 minutes.
You can definitely set that up later, like if you want a PR, maybe a specific tags and stuff like that, so you can always do that. So then, from now on, you can just go ahead, send the PR, and the deployment, It's just go on automatically. What else we want to show in the in the dashboard?
I think that's it for now. I think obviously the project area, we're working on support for, teams and organizations. So you're not alone deploying things, even though it's easy. And yeah, it's work in progress, but that's where we are.
Okay, sounds good. If you want to get access to Globe, so we have a private preview right now. You can just go to globe.dev.
Yes.
And sign up to get access. So we're gonna send like a mass invitation later to all of you. So hopefully you get access and you can try it out. We're happy to get feedback on this. We really want to make this product as perfect as possible to get rid of the excuses of, oh, we can't write this anymore, right? So let's move on.
Yes.
Any questions so far? I guess we're kind of in the end. I like to take some questions.